Presidency comments on the just concluded by-elections in the country.
Makurdi High Court restrains new Benue House Speaker and 4 others from acting as principal officers.
Nigeria's under-20 female national team, the Falconets, book a quarter-final place at the FIFA Under-20 Women's World Cup, France 2018.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we review Saturday's by-elections in 4 states, plus the Trader Money Initiative.
Now, over the weekend, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, conducted 4 by-elections to fill vacancies in Katsina North, Bauchi South, Lokoja Kogi Kotonkarfe Federal Constituency, and Obodo Constituency in Cross River State. The All Progressive Congress won in 3 of the states.
That's right, Feby. The 3 states in which the All Progressives Congress won were as follows: Katsina, that's the Senate, the Bauchi, also the Senate, as well as the federal constituency seat in Kogi State, which was also won by the APC. But the PDP took the seat in Cross River. And a number of staff of INEC were deployed for the conduct of the by-elections in the 4 locations.
In Obodo, 700 ad hoc staff were deployed to 117 polling units, where 4 candidates participated.
Now, in Bauchi in particular, there was a report of a low turnout of voters, with additional reports, of course, of the purchase of fake ballot papers and PVCs, as well as illegal thumbprinting of ballot papers by hoodlums. Now, it is the conduct and the outcome of the by-elections in those 4 places, the 4 states, Cross River, Bauchi, Katsina, as well as Kogi, that shall be the first topic that we'll be examining in our conversation segment on Good Morning Nigeria today.
And in our second topic, the issue is on the Trader Money Initiative, a new creation under Government's Enterprise and Empowerment Program, GIP. Or is it GIP?
All right. Now, the scheme is intended to give traders in the country an opportunity to access loans without a collateral.
2 million petty traders from every state in Nigeria will receive a minimum of 10,000 naira between now and December. 30,000 traders are to benefit from each state.
All right. By the time the scheme, of course, goes round, we expect the total number of beneficiaries would hit about 2 million. Now, Lagos, Kano, and Abia states are the pilot states for the scheme, with Lagos kicking off the process. So far, some 500,000 potential beneficiaries have been enumerated by the various enumeration agents in the locations. Now, the enumerators were supervised by officials of the Bank of Industry, which is deploying the scheme. And the benefiting petty traders are to repay the loans in 6 months. So that's our second topic for conversation this morning. And it's on that note that we'd like to welcome you to this edition of Good Morning Nigeria, which is reaching you as always live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We're Africa's largest television network. And my name is Kingsley Osadola. I'd also like to welcome and introduce to the program today as a co-presenter my other colleague, Femi Okewo. Hi, Femi. Good to have you on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you, Kingsley. It's always nice to be on any forum that would help disseminate information.
That's right. All right. Now, in the course of today's program, as always, we have our regular companion segments, and those will include newspaper review, business, sports, foreign, and entertainment. Right now, we are taking the highlights of the morning news, and here is Miriam Akpata with the stories. Hi, Miriam.
Good morning, Femi and Kingsley. Here is the news. Now to political story. The presidency has described the performance of the All Progressives Congress in the just concluded by-elections in the 3 states as a good omen for the Buhari-Osinbajo ticket in the 2019 elections. A press briefing jointly held by Senior Special Assistants to the President on Media and Publicity, Malam Garba Shehu and Laulu Akande, says the outcome of the elections was an indication of the belief and confidence the people of the country have in the Buhari administration as the only party that can bring an end to corruption and poverty in the land.
Clear statement by Nigerians that Nigerians have spoken that President Buhari maintains and retains his momentum. Nigerians, by this statement, are also saying that they no longer have time for politics of insult.
Still on politics, the All Progressives Congress in Gombe State has continued with all mobilization in support of President Muhammadu Buhari as it braces towards taking over from the ruling PDP in Gombe State. This is evident by the crowd of supporters who gathered during the commissioning of a joint campaign office for the president and one of the governorship aspirants in the state.
Gombe State, 100% of the people are solidly behind the APC.
Member representing Buhari Amak Federal Constituency, Zemfania Beatrice Gisalo, has appealed to the FCT residents to support the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari in its efforts to put Nigeria on the path of growth and prosperity. He stated this during a tour to the 6 area councils aimed at sensitizing the people to support APC retain power come 2019.
To mobilize our electorate, to educate them on where we should vote massively for the 2019 election, and all of them to come out so that we can vote the candidate of our choice.
Now to judiciary matters, the lingering crisis in the Benue State House of Assembly has taken another dimension as a High Court sitting in Makurdi has restrained the new Speaker Titus Uba and 4 others from parading themselves as principal officers at the commencement of hearing counsel to the plaintiffs. Mamam Mike Usman filed an application urging the court to discountenance the action which led to the election of the defendants as principal officers as illegal and a violation of the House standing rules. He further argued that only the Speaker or the Deputy Speaker has the legal standing to convene the sitting of the House. He said the actions taken by the 22 lawmakers was null and void. Justice Teresa Ugoche agreed with the submission of the plaintiffs' counsel and granted the order, noting that all parties should restrain from parading themselves as principal officers pending determination of the substantive suit. The matter has been fixed for hearing on Friday this week. Now to security matters, the Air Task Force of Operation Durab Mikeya has notched up another series of successful degrading of bandits in Sububu Forest, Birni Magaji and Rugu Forest in Zamfara State. A statement by the Director of Public Relations and Information of the Nigerian Air Force, Air Commodore Ibikunle Darabola, indicates that air interdiction and armed reconnaissance missions was conducted following discovery of a bandit hideout within the forest. Well, consequently, the Air Task Force dispatched a combat aircraft for armed reconnaissance to neutralize the armed bandits' hideouts. Operation Diran Mikeya, which commenced on 31st July 2018, is an intensive air operation aimed at locating and neutralizing armed bandits, cattle rustling, and other criminal activities in the northwestern part of the country. Wife of the President, Aisha Muhammadu Buhari, has been conferred with an honorary doctorate degree of public administration by the Osun University, Ashan in the Republic of Korea on Monday, 13th August 2018. The conferment ceremony took place at the conference hall of the institution with a number of Nigeria academicians, family members and her associates in attendance. State House correspondent Aliu Kabir reports that the university campus is located about an hour drive from Seoul, the capital city of Korea.
This honor will serve as a motivation to broaden my humanitarian activities and also to encourage women and young generation to imbibe the culture of rendering assistance to the needy.
Director General of the Nigerian Television Authority, Yakubu Ibn Mohammed, has urged heads of finance and chief accountant of the NTA zonal centers and stations to rededicate themselves to blocking revenue leakages and strengthening their books in line with global best practices. Abdullahi Mohammed reports the Director General made the call in Kaduna while addressing participants at the 2018 NTA's Finance Conference.
Women in power, headed by His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari, has his mantra as change and fight against corruption. By these, it means all your actions in the course of doing your assigned duties must be tailored to this change and fighting corruption.
Well, that's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Femi and Kingsley after this break.
Unemployment, notably youth unemployment, features strongly in our party's manifesto. We intend to attack the problem promptly through revival of agriculture.
The 30K is going a long way. Actually, I bought an acre of land for 60K like 2012, and presently I have a cassava farm and a yam farm.
Reorganized, trained, and fully equipped, we are the new improved Nigeria Police Force. We fight crime, we bust syndicates. Whatever the crime, wherever the hideout, the Nigeria Police Force will get you busted. Stop kidnapping, armed robbery, murder, pipeline vandalism, and other criminal activities. Be productive. Be security conscious. Join the police force to secure your life and property. This message is from the Nigeria Police Force Public Relations Department.
Give me the value pack. Helen!
You do great value shopping.
Absolutely. I'm a champion at getting value.
Then you must have bought the Harpic 200 ml.
Why Harpic when I have this?
Even after applying them 10 times, they won't give a sparkling clean toilet.
Impossible.
Challenge. Detergent and bleach can't give a sparkling clean toilet even after 10 times. But Harpic 200 ml gives a sparkling clean toilet at one go.
Wow.
Harpic 200 ml. Real deal. Now only 200 naira.
Fake news which is shared for malicious purposes is a danger to our peace and security in Nigeria. Misinformation as fake news is a serious threat to our hard-earned democracy and promotes hatred and misunderstanding between our communities. We are all responsible for stopping the spread of fake news in its tracks. So, always check the source and credibility of any news item. Say no to fake news. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the daring and invincible Louis the Mosquito. responsible for 200 malaria cases all on its own. Is there anything that can kill Louis? Morphine! Presenting Mortise Power Guard. Its powerful formula kills malaria mosquitoes fast. So, get Mortise Power Guard.
Nigerian government urged to find ways to ensure food security and engage youths in the agricultural value chain as African Development Bank harps on technology to optimize farmers' output. Details on Business News with Joy Uzo.
It's good to have you join me on Business News. We'll begin with a report on boosting agriculture in Africa. Now, the president of the African Development Bank Group, Mr. Akinwumi Adesina, has stressed the need to give farmers across the continent new technologies with the potential to transform agricultural production. Adesina said evidence from countries like Nigeria had demonstrated that technology plus strong government backing is already yielding positive results. Akinwumi Adesina made the assertion recently during a keynote address delivered at the 2018 Agricultural and Applied Economics Association, AAEA, annual meeting held in Washington, D.C. He said the African Development Bank is currently working with the World Bank and other stakeholders to mobilize $1 billion to scale up agricultural technologies across Africa under a new initiative called Technologies for African Agricultural Transformation, TAAT, adding that there is no reason why Africa should be spending $35 billion a year importing food. Adesina used the opportunity to advocate the need for African universities to adapt their curriculum to enable technology-driven farmers and to focus on agribusiness entrepreneurship for young people. Through this initiative, the African Development Bank has, in the past 2 years, committed close to $300 million to develop the next generation of agribusiness and commercial farmers for Africa. Meanwhile, Nigerian youths are becoming more conscious of the agribusiness world as a veritable means of job and wealth creation. Madame Joshua is one of such. An undergraduate of entrepreneurship at the National Open University, Kaduna State. He is a farmer and cultivates a variety of crops in large quantities for commercial purpose. But this, he says, is not without support from Fresh and Young Brains Development Initiative, a non-governmental organization that specializes in training Nigerian youths to excel in agriculture.
The knowledge we came with was rendered useless here, and new ideas were conceived. We have been greatly impacted.
So as a youth organization, we felt it is nice for us to find a way to plug in young people into the agricultural sector, given the fact that the high unemployment rate is prevailing and that young people are actually looking for alternative to livelihood.
By 2020, we should be able to establish and promote at least 10,000 youth-led climate-smart farms and agribusinesses across Africa. And so far, between 2014 and now, we've trained over 1,500 young people from different states. And interestingly, where we are now, Alazijan Farms is a pilot demonstration farm we use to train young people on climate-smart agriculture.
The future of this country is on agriculture, and it is the youth who has to be encouraged to do this agriculture. And we are ready to assist by providing credits to their graduates and their farmers.
We now bring you a graphic summary of latest closing figures from the equities market. That's Business News. Many thanks for watching. I am Joy Uzo.
Thank you very much, Joy, for the business package. Next for us now, we'll take a look at the front pages of some of today's newspapers in our review session. right, Femi, we have a number of papers here. I think about 6 or 7 papers. Yes. And there are stories that are common to the front pages of the papers, especially the lead stories. Everything has to do with politics. Yes. All right, so let's begin with the papers that you have, Femi.
The Punch looks at some judiciary reports and political, though, in the courts, talks about the attempt to stop any move to remove Senate President. So the Punch leads with senators sue AGF, DSS, and police. But then I don't know whether these are the organizations that intend to remove the Senate President, why they are suing them.
All right. I mean, whatever it is, let's take that. There are some riders along with that with regard to the reconvening of the National Assembly. If you take a look at those riders again, it says that National Assembly never agreed to reconvene on Tuesday. Say Reps Obasanjo and Senate President Saraki in closed-door meeting. So that's what you have there from the lead story of the Punch newspaper. Let's come to the Authority very quickly. Authority newspaper, the lead story comes with the kicker as a headline, Election Budget. We are not reconvening, and that's according to the National Assembly. With 3 riders, Obasanjo, Atiku, Saraki, Tambuwal in secret meeting. Oshomole, an APC senators intensify anti-Saraki plot, and Akpabio cries out over a call to declare his seat vacant. And for the This Day newspaper, its politics is also the lead, and it says with a double-decker headline, again, Buhari declines assent to Electoral Act Amendment Bill. With 3 riders, use of card reader in jeopardy, and presidency explains action today, and appeal court halts arrest of INEC chairman. And the story you read earlier from the Punch newspaper is also there on the front page of This Day. DSS, police, Attorney General of the Federation, others sued over moves to remove Saraki. That's the headline I'm reading now from This Day newspaper. And just below that, another story on politics from This Day. It says, you are behaving like militants. Presidency tells PDP. Let me take another story from New Telegraph.
New Telegraph has a Saraki story too, but it says Saraki consults OBJ as Tambuwal parleys Atiku. And then the riders are Buhari will run with Oshibajo. That's the presidency, reassuring. And then Kogi governor to Nigerians, get your PVCs to vote president. And I dare say other offices, political offices too.
All right, I'm to the other headlines there.
Yes, on the Daily Telegraph, we still have the impeachment saga still running down the front page. Senators take battle to court, and that is the one we earlier highlighted on the Punch. So the New Telegraph too has that. They say they seek order to stop Saraki's removal, sues Senate, AGF, IGP, DSS. And then the second one is National Assembly shelves emergency session. That's the resumption which we were all expecting this week.
All right, then that's a story with regard to occurrences of the non-event at the National Assembly today. That story is there as lead as well for the Nigerian pilot. And it comes with the headline, U-turn, as National Assembly calls off resumption. Members deny knowledge of plan to reconvene and says lay down rules must be followed in leadership in crucial meeting. And then below the photograph, that's still from the National Assembly. National Assembly crisis. You should be ashamed for indicting Saraki, Misal Tesujudu. That's on page 5. Now, very quickly, Femi, let's go about some of these stories that we have read. Yeah. Last week, the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, Yusuf Lasun, indicated that the House of Reps will reconvene today, Tuesday, being the 14th of August.
If you allow me, yes. If you got his words, yes. He really actually was not sure. He was saying we may reconvene Tuesday or Wednesday. And then, of course, it meant that for them not to reconvene means that whatever he was expecting really did not happen for them to reconvene Tuesday or Wednesday?
Well, what the spokesperson of the House is now indicating, that's Namdas, Honorable Namdas, is that there are laid down procedures for reconvening the legislature once it has proceeded validly on recess. And it would appear, because if you look at the, if you again look at the press conference that was addressed by the Deputy Speaker on that occasion, I mean, you had a number of principal officers that were with him on that very occasion. And it was in the immediate aftermath of the siege to the National Assembly by the DSA. So it was part of the reassurances that, all right, the National Assembly of the House in particular, would reconvene it today or Wednesday, which is tomorrow. Now, there is no indication when the National Assembly would reconvene, whether the chamber in the Senate or whether the chamber in the House. And that's why, of course, you are having stories with regard to what will happen with the budget that has been presented for INEC to conduct the election, 242 billion, and other matters arising with regard to environment and so on and so forth.
Kingsley, with this court case that seems to want to stop the removal of the Senate president, possibly the fear about preservation of the status of the leadership would encourage them to reconvene, possibly when if that court case continues.
Well, that might, but I mean, suppose it depends on how the lawmakers themselves decide to play their cards. As you very well know, I mean, they are not due to reconvene until next month, but there is some urgency in asking them, you know, to say, hey, call off your annual vacation and then attend to some urgent matters, and you can then return. But of course, there are also issues with regard to whether or not, you know, Saraki in particular, who is Senate President, will continue to retain his seat. The APC is insisting that he must vacate his seat, you know, and that his supporters in the Senate are saying that it is not by party membership.
That is what is being preempted by the court case.
That's right, and we'll see how that plays out. But there's a very significant story from this day newspaper with regard to the president declining to assent to the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. If you recall, the amendment bill has been contentious with particular reference to the schedule of elections. Yes. The president, of course, declined initially to give his assent on account of that particular aspect, plus other points that he had highlighted, and then returned by way of communication to the legislature. Now, the National Assembly now sat down and said, all right, now, if there are contentious aspects, and indeed there were, okay, let's get rid of those contentious aspects, get a new bill, pass a new bill, clean it up, and then forward it to the president for his accent. This day is reporting that the president has declined to give his accent. So back again to square one. And there was a court of appeal ruling in recent times.
That empowered the National Assembly to do what it initially did. Let's hope that we are not going to throw away the baby with the bath water, because there are so many very fundamental amendments in the Electoral Act which will enhance our electoral process. The one that everybody seems to pay attention to is the reordering of the election sequence. But there are several other ones. For the president to decline accent, I guess there are still areas to be sorted out in these electoral.
That's right. Now, let's take other headlines very quickly now. This day newspaper, above the nameplate, we'll take one story from there. 26 industrial consumers ask for direct supply from Gencos. With a rider, Discos must meter consumers. Federal government insists. And then a story that's been running for some time. We have the headlines on the front page of the Authority as well as Nigerian Pilot. It's right there at the foot of the front page of the Authority newspaper. It says 21 billion naira and arms, PVCs not in Daura's home. That's according to DSS. That story is also there on the front page of the Nigerian Pilot. You have it there, no money or weapons found in Daura's house. That's DSS. I'm sure, Femi, you must have seen some of those videos that have been circulating in the social media, especially over the weekend with regard to the stash of foreign currencies that were allegedly removed from the home of the recently removed DG of the DSS. But DSS is saying no weapons, no money, and no fake PVCs found in the residence.
That's why I would wish that we have means of forensic determination of some of these videos that go around, how they sought for such credible-looking videos, and now it's been denied.
Absolutely so. That's what we are saying from the papers. Now, from the foot of the front page of the Nigerian Pilot, let's take these stories. This one has been running for some time as well. Appeal Court stops arrest of INEC chairman. That's there. And Nigerians have converted insecurity to business. You have that. And then Saraki guilty as others on defection. That's according to Akpabio, who himself has defected from the PDP to the APC. Military neutralizes armed bandits in Zamfara and Sububu Forest. That's a new one. We used to hear of Bereniguari. That's that. So, Femi, just before we take the editorial, which is from the Sun newspaper, and it's at page 15 of the Sun newspaper. It says, the World Bank IMF warning against excessive borrowing. The editorial opens by indicating that notwithstanding the fact that Nigeria's current debt to GDP ratio is sitting comfortably within the acceptable international threshold, the federal government should heed the repeated advice of global financial institutions to cut down on excessive borrowing and put more energy into private investment in the economy. I think the editorial speaks for itself.
It does.
That's right. Now, that's the much, of course, that we can take in our newspaper review segment this morning. There was a story we recall last week. Femi, you and I were not together on set. Last Tuesday, we did say something about a kidnap attempt that was foiled in Ondo State, and one of the kidnappers tripped while he was trying to flee, and the police arrested him. They found on him some 400 milligrams of tramadol, and then, of course, he went into a deep slumber. By Monday last week, he was still asleep. Now, by weekend, there were reports indicating that he still had not woken up. That's some 5-6 days later. But there is no follow-up in the papers to let us know what has happened to the kidnapped suspect in Ondo State. They said he had been asleep for some 5 or 6 days, and that, of course, would cause some medical issues for him. All right, so that's the much we take now. Let's take a short break. When we return, we'll get into our conversation segment.
Hate speech is not a joke. It incites genocide and crimes against humanity. Most of Africa's civil wars are caused by hate speech from one tribe against another. We don't want it here. The Nigerian government stands firm against hate speech.
Under no conditions whatsoever should we tolerate or excuse or justify hate speech or hateful conduct of any kind, especially where such is illegal.
There's no doubt that the resurgent push for separatism, as well as the rising cases of ethnic and religious disharmony, are all traceable to the growing phenomenon of hate speech.
One nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Nigeria, one nation, one people.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
These days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored, and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection, and cause disunity. Before you believe or share any news, ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous. Whether you do it for fun or for political gains, real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service announcement from NTA.
Brought us as usual.
As usual. You have no problem.
For the three
you are welcome, sir.
As usual, yeah?
Welcome. You take that one. You take that one. You don't understand? We want Nigeria homegrown rice. Finish. You don't have?
Join the rice revolution today.
No other rice that tastes like Nigerian rice.
Are you sorry? That's the Nigerian rice we are talking about.
Chocolate made in Nigerian rice. Healthy food.
I'm going to bring Mrs. Momo to come to chocolate rice of made in Nigeria here. And see how it are made.
Correct.
And how they are cook it.
Correct.
Homegrown rice are good for your health. It boosts our economy and give employment to our people.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
For years, the NTA has been promoting science, technology, arts and crafts under the tagged name National Children's Expo. We are set with another edition as we gather children around Nigeria, junior category ages 6 to 12 and senior category ages 13 to 18. The theme for Expo 2018, achieving self-sufficiency in agriculture, meeting the challenges of security and exposition of alternative energy as pathways to national development. Date, October 21st to 25th, 2018. Venue, NTA Headquarters Arena, Area 11, Garki, Abuja. We are set to celebrate the best of innovation across the country. For more information, please call the following numbers. NTA ETV, promoting learning.
As a backgrounder to our first discussion, let's now take a report on the conduct of Saturday's by-elections in Nigeria by Timothy Yusuf.
The Independent National Electoral Commission last Saturday conducted 4 by-elections to fill vacancies in Katsina North and Bauchi South senatorial districts, Lokoja Kogi Kotonkarifi Federal Constituency, and Obudu State Constituency in Cross River State. In Kogi, election was conducted across the 310 polling units in Lokoja and Kogi Kotonkarifi local government areas. The election in Katsina was conducted in 1,577 polling units spread across the 12 local government areas that make up the Katsina North senatorial district. 6 candidates from 6 political parties, including 2 brothers, contested the election, while in Bauchi State, the by-election was conducted across the 7 local governments that constitute the South Senatorial Zone with a total of 877,160 registered voters, out of which 256,763 people cast votes in the election. In Cross River, 700 ad hoc staff were deployed to 117 polling units in the Obudu constituency of the state.
All right, thank you very much, Timothy Yusuf, for that background report. Here with us on the studios now to discuss this issue, would like to welcome the Independent National Electoral Commission Director for Publicity and Voter Education, Oluwole Osaze-Ozie. Of course, he's a familiar face of Good Morning Nigeria. Osaze-Ozie, pleasure to have you on the program today.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
All right. Also here with us, another familiar face, Samson Itodo. Samson Itodo is the Executive Director of YAGA. That's the Youth Initiative for Advocacy, Growth, and Advancement. Samson, pleasure to have you on the program today.
Always
as well.
a pleasure.
All right. So let's begin the conversation with the comments from Oluwole Osaze-Ozie. What reports did you get with regard to the conduct of the 4 by-elections that took place in 4 states in the country over the weekend?
Thank you. Well, we've concluded the elections and returns have been made. We used the opportunity to test some of our processes and some of the things we're developing towards Osun and towards the 2019 elections. But generally it was a success, but of course in spite of 1 or 2 challenges, especially in the federal constituency in Kotonkarifi area and Kogi area of Kogi State. It was disturbing, and unfortunately 1 or 2 things did not go right, and there was a loss of life, so that was very, very disturbing indeed. But by and large, the elections were generally peaceful in most areas, and a return was made, as I said.
The Kotonkarifi Kogi elections, it would seem first the loophole was in terms of security. Is that INEC's observation?
Well, we have not seen the final reports, but we're in the situation room throughout Saturday and our monitors were on ground. I don't really put it down to a lack of security. There's this debate always. For example, we've just come out of Ekiti and the police said they deployed 30,000 people, and a lot of people came and said that was over-deployment. It was an overemphasis on security or over-deployment. Fortunately, there was no loss of life recorded in Ekiti as such in the conduct of the elections. So when you have this debate will continue. I don't know, but I wouldn't necessarily say it was a failure of security, but maybe the police and security agencies can speak much better than we can.
But INEC should have a picture of what went wrong for lives to have been lost.
Well, when you say a picture of what went wrong, it's difficult. Our primary responsibility is to conduct the election. In the course of the conduct of the election, outside of the polling area, we have no control, no say. So it's difficult to say, but it's something we track and something that will be reviewed in conjunction with the security agencies who have the primary responsibility to secure lives and property. There are reports. We had the reports, yes. But what exactly happened will be a subject of investigation.
All right. Now, but let's, again, for the benefit of our viewers, the by-elections that were conducted over the weekend were to fill 2 vacancies in the Senate, 1 vacancy in the House of Representatives, and then 1 vacancy in the Cross River State House of Assembly. Mr. Oluwole Usazeozi, you said that INEC used the opportunity of the by-elections to test some of its processes ahead of Osun and then also ahead of the 2019 election. Can we have a sense of what went right with those processes, assuming, of course, they would not compromise the integrity of your arrangements?
Oh, no, most of them will not, actually. There are things of public knowledge. For example, there was the transmission of results. And we're working with the National Communications Commission, and we've mapped out the whole country, for example, seen where the networks are, which service providers are strongest at particular locations. Those ones that have 2G, those ones have 3G. So these are the kind of things in terms of transmission of results and collation of results. In terms of color coding, we further try to enhance, and we did see one, at least I'm aware of one example where the color coding worked so well. There was a particular ballot, for example, that was a different color coded, and definitely was not issued because it was not stamped by the presiding officer. And so, obviously, people tried to test the system, and at least they didn't get away with it. I can assure you about that. And then there's also the issue of the card readers, the enhanced card readers. We've been testing the enhanced card readers using the aperture to capture the fingerprints, and those things worked fairly well from the preliminary reports we got.
All right, we'll come back to you presently. Samson Etodo, what's your take on the conduct of the 4 by-elections on the weekend?
I think that it's important to put on record that we are recording tremendous improvements in our electoral process, particularly the conduct of elections. And this transition is observed in relation to deployment of election materials, as well as the conduct of the election officials. And it's important to also state that the incidents of vote buying that we are recording in all our elections is it's a consequence, or it's an indicator of improvements within our political, our electoral process, and the fact that it's very difficult to rig elections today in present-day Nigeria. But having said that, if you look at the elections across board, first let's look at voter turnout. It was abysmally poor. In Bauchi, it was about 39%. None of the elections actually recorded up to 50% voter turnout. In fact, Obudu was actually worse. It was somewhere around 26%. Same for Kogi and same for Katsina. You would expect that for a very important by-election of this nature, where elected representatives were going to be elected and represented the interests of the people, there was very poor turnout of voters for the election. If you look at the management of the election, to a great extent, it was largely successful. But there were actually some gaps. So if you look at Bauchi, for instance, look at the number of, and both elections, both Katsina and Bauchi, recorded high number of rejected ballots, from 10,000 to about 12,000, although for Kogi and Obudu, the number of rejected ballots were very, very low. But what is worrisome, again, is the vote buying incidents that we're recording. And you can see from all the elections, there are reports of vote buying that occurred in all the elections, which is some challenge that we have to deal with as a people. If you also look at the participation of the political actors themselves, well, there are also critical questions. But let's look at what happened in Kogi, for instance. The report that we got was an individual came and was making attempts to snatch the ballot box, and the people actually stood up against it, and he was killed in the course of the process, a mob action. When we talk about mandate protection, it's important for Nigerians to know that mandate protection is actually not, it's not taken to violence, or it's not killing people or mob action. Mandate protection is holding people accountable. And what we would have expected was the security agents who were there, even though we know security agents are not armed when they're deployed to the polling station, was to ensure that the people hand the individual or those who were involved in this act to the security agents for investigation and prosecution. But we condemn the act, that whether supporters or voters will take to violence and actually kill individuals. And I think it's important that as a nation we condemn this, because when we talk about mandate protection and we say protect your votes, it's not killing people who come to steal the ballot, it's arresting them, because citizens have a role to also arrest and hand them over to security agents. But we hope that this will be thoroughly investigated and actions will be taken, but that's not the whole concept of mandate protection. What I also find worrying with the elections, and perhaps the INEC director is here, is, in my view, I thought that the provisions of the law was that in the event where the total number of registered votes or ballots for a particular election is sufficient to actually swing the votes, that election will be declared inconclusive. If you look at the number of cancellations in Kogi, for instance, is over and above, I think it's about 12 or 19,000, I can't get the figure, and the margin of lead was quite slim. So the number of cancellations was over and above the margin of lead between the two candidates. But I think an explanation needs to be provided by the Electoral Commission on why they went ahead to actually declare and return a winner in that election. For the other elections, Bauchi, for instance, got about, the margin of lead was somewhere around 68,000, but the number of cancellations, the total number of registered voters in the 138 polling units was about 69,000. So in those instances, so there was a bit of lack of consistency on the results declaration part, or on the part of the Electoral Commission in this election. But above all, we're glad that the election held. It was largely successful. And all these incidents that were observed are incidents that we have to actually take seriously, especially what actually transpired in Kogi.
Now, I want to take you back to the apathy we see in voters. I'm surprised that most voters would participate more in presidential elections than in elections that you expect that concerns them more locally. House of Assembly, House of Representatives, and then the Senate. These are elections that you think that the beneficiaries relate more with the localities. Why do you think, in spite of the closeness of this election to the voters, they still don't turn out for elections?
I think there are several factors, quite frankly. First, it could be the level of voter education and political awareness, as well as mobilization of voters. And this responsibility is shared both from the Electoral Commission or the political actors themselves or civil society or media. Was there sufficient time to actually mobilize voters to come out to cast their votes? Secondly, there's so much attention at the center. And the center, to a large extent, is the presidential elections. And it's not just even citizens, even the way we plan as well. There's so much focus on the presidential elections. And we don't pay attention on these legislative elections because they are very, very important. And that's where, beyond voter education, we need some form of political education so the voters will know the real importance and the value of the legislature and the fact that these are your true representatives and you speak through them, so you should be involved in deciding who actually emerges at the end of the day. The third could be fatigue, quite frankly, and the fact that you look at these elections, most of them were very, very contentious. In fact, if not all, they were very, very contentious. Is it Katsina or where you had two brothers who were actually contesting? And don't forget, it's also the constituency of the president. You look at Bauchi, and these elections were conducted within the context of a gale of defection, within the context of the Cold War between the president, the executive, and the legislature. And so to a large extent, there were a lot of controversies, and this election was conducted in that, within that context. And for some voters, it could have actually discouraged them, and they didn't want to participate. But we need to emphasize that it is important that we break this jinx of voter turnout for our elections. Since 2011, we've not crossed the 50% mark. And that is not good for our democracy. Because to an extent, for instance, in Obudu, only 12,000 people determine a winner. The winner won by 12,000 votes out of a constituency that had over 68,000 registered voters. That is not good for our democracy, and we need to reverse it.
Yeah, Samson, thanks a lot. Let's bring it again, Osazel. So there are some points that Samson Etodo talked about with regard to cancelled votes cancelled in some polling units, and why INEC then proceeded, to declare a winner. Would you like to explain that?
Quite honestly, I don't have full facts about that, and it would be unfair of me to try to explain it. I cannot, quite sincerely.
All right, but it's still with the Kogi, because Kogi appeared to have been a flashpoint, amongst the 4 by-elections that INEC conducted. There was a report on the weekend of one incident that occurred at some polling point that voters were on the queue, they were accredited, and after the accreditation, the thugs who were at that vicinity now dispersed the voters and asked them to leave and threatened the electoral officer and said, listen, they have got accreditation, let them go. And the report also further indicated that the thugs now, of course, took the ballot papers, thumbprinted them, and got the results all cooked up, and then transmitted through the process you were talking about with regard to the transmission of results. Did you get to hear about this incident?
Well, I heard, we did hear something similar, but not exactly on all fours with what you have narrated. For example, you get accredited and you vote at the same time. So that's why I'm a bit worried about that particular story, that you got accredited and then they came after accreditation but before voting. Individually, you get accredited and you vote. So I don't know about that, but there were reports, or a report of hoodlums getting into the polling unit to utilize unused or not yet used ballot papers. But of course, the minute we got that report back in the situation room and also in the local office, I think that result was cancelled in that particular unit. So it wasn't only because of violence that results were cancelled, for overvoting and for reports by the presiding officers to say that, look, the result declared or brought to this collation center does not reflect what actually transpired. If there's something untoward happened, every presiding officer is required to write a report. And part of that report is to justify the results you have produced to the collation center. So if there was no problem, you say, oh, it went smoothly, accreditation, everything went smoothly, that's okay. But if there's disruption at any particular stage, it's also stated in the report. And of course, we try to corroborate that from others who were in the scene. And that's what Samson was talking about when he was talking about mandate protection. Some people actually follow these things to the collation point. Accredited agents and the observers, the collation officer makes certain inquiries and satisfies himself or herself about the report of the presiding officer, whether that reflects what actually transpired or not. And there were quite a number of cancellations in Kogi, and partly because of all different types of malpractices or undue influence on the presiding officers were reported. So those ones were cancelled where we're not too sure of the integrity of that result from coming from a particular polling unit.
Taking an overview of all these elections that we keep holding before the general elections, is INEC not concerned that everybody seems to appraise INEC that you are making progress in the electoral process, and yet nothing, in fact, it seems to be getting worse, the contention on each election. Is INEC not worried that whatever it seems to be achieving does not seem to be driving home the results which you want?
Well, first of all, I think Samson made allusions to that. It's apart from voter education, the whole conduct of election is a multi-stakeholder process. So when things don't get well, when things are not going smoothly, it doesn't reflect just badly on INEC, it reflects on our society and on our democracy. Yeah. And we cannot dwell too much on the negative, actually. You take an overall result. It's just like any other examination. There are 10 questions. You don't do so well in one, but you do well in 9 others. And I think when you measure the sanctity of the ballot, you measure the integrity of the process, by and large, it was a good outing. The fact that, unfortunately, somebody lost their lives under whatever circumstances, it's not a good thing. But let us not dwell on that. Millions of people came out to vote. One person or two, maybe.
Mr. Osazeuzi,
Yes.
you have been part of all these discussions for years.
Yes, indeed.
I'm sure we have forgotten about discussing logistics for elections. We have stopped. We have gone beyond that. Nobody talks about that anymore.
Yes.
And yet we still say the elections were not free and fair and credible and all that. And so that's why I picked on that area. If the negative part is just 1%, and it taints the whole other process, shouldn't Nigerians be concerned?
Anything that goes wrong in any process, we should be concerned about it. And our efforts should be geared towards what can we do to remedy the situation? What can we do to improve upon the process? So yes, those things we are getting right. We still go back to the drawing board. Can we do it better? So the fact that logistics delivery is better now, can we improve on it? We still look at it. It's a human endeavor. It can't be perfect. And those things that are not so right, what can we do about it? The things that are within our own control administratively, we try to address. The things that need legal reform, we probably make advocacy visits and do things, tell those who are responsible for that. Things that concern security, we engage the security agencies. How much better can we do this? But the mindset of the politician is still the most difficult thing to reform or to change.
Well, that's right. Gentlemen, the one point I remember, Samson, we had you when we were reviewing the Ekiti governorship election in recent times, and one of the points on that occasion you've also restated today that to the extent that it's becoming much more challenging for potential abusers of the electoral process to rig elections, usually by manipulating the results after the fact of voting, they are now resorting to see and buy, which is voter inducement, vote purchase, and so on and so forth. There were reports of, again, let's use the plain lingo now, see and buy in the course of these elections. How is INEC responding to this? Yes, I mean, INEC is not the one who is seeing and buying, but these transactions, these illegal transactions, these transactions occur within the vicinity of the polling station. And of course, if your vote is supposed to be secret, what the usual process is that after your thumbprint, you show it to the agent, the middle person. The person sees that you have seen the symbol, then thereafter you are given a slip, or what they call a tally number. and then you cast your vote, you go to the tally number, use the tally number to go and collect 3,000 or 4,000 or 5,000, all within the vicinity of the polling station. How is INEC responding to this?
It's a very worrisome thing. Let's put things in context. I think vote buying has always been with us, but probably it hasn't come to the fore as much as it has now done. Samson mentioned that, look, it's difficult to subvert the process in other ways. So this is probably the best ways for now that the people who engage in this have seen. And what can we do about it? Apart from reorientation, which is a long-term thing which we'll keep working on and telling people it's wrong. But in the midst of poverty and sometimes greed, it's difficult. That message does not sink in as well. It doesn't fall on fertile ground, so it doesn't sprout and germinate as well as it should. We hope it will do that. So we have to take different approaches. That is one approach. Increased and intensified voter education and political education, enlightening people about the consequences of selling your votes and withdrawing your mandate as well. It's not freely given. You are being enticed to give your vote. That's a problem. But also, we said, what can we do administratively? One of the things we have done is to rearrange the configuration, to reconfigure the polling units, such that the secrecy of the ballots can be further maintained and heightened. Again, that has worked to an extent. We want to remove, if we cannot completely eliminate the see and buy syndrome, you say, let us remove it from the polling unit, from the immediate vicinity of the polling unit, which we control administratively. So we'll try to reconfigure it and told our officers to look, watch out for this kind of things. Ensure you arrange the polling unit in such a way that the secrecy of the ballot is protected, better protected, so that you don't expose your ballot, so the people don't know. Like every other marketplace, there has to be willing buyers and willing sellers. So what can we do to separate those two people from coming together? That's part of the thing. But also, there's a law against compromising the secrecy of the ballots. But there is no law against me, the voter, exposing my ballots. So maybe it's something, a conversation we should start and say, are there things we can do to make it wrong, even if not penal, make it wrong for people to expose how they voted?
Well, exposing how you voted, I mean, it's compromising the secrecy of the ballot.
Yes, but for compromising the secrecy of a third party, the law says that, look, none of the officials or the agents should state how people voted or should expose how any person has voted. Voting should be in secret. But it says nothing about you, yourself, the voter, showing how you voted or carelessly, in quotes, carelessly exposing how you voted.
Well, in this case, all right, thanks a lot. We'll pause you in the meantime. It's not a careless thing, because if the transaction is systematic, then it couldn't possibly be careless, something. To say, look, this is where I put it in the masses, and then I collect the tally number from you, and then I go to collect cash. Once you trace and trail it, I think it'll be possible to nail one or two persons as a lesson. But we have another guest.
Yes, we have another guest joining us from our Benin Network Center. He is a political scientist, Dr. Isaiah Osifo. You're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you. Good morning.
Let me quickly ask you your thoughts as you monitored the last 4 by-elections held across the country. What thoughts do you have you want to share with Nigerians?
Well, frankly, I think if we must be sincere with ourselves as citizens of this country, majority of Nigerians are disappointed because societies aspire for progress, not retrogression. I listened to Director of INEC of Publicity and Voters Education. We have a lot of theories and rationalizations of the failure on the part of INEC in this dispensation. Now, protecting voters, or voting and showing to members of the local party as to get payment. I was not aware that there was time in this country where we had an open ballot system that was free and fair. Now, if you conduct an open ballot system where people queue on the line between the two parties then, the NRC and the SDP, and they are counted, and the voters are protected, and the elections are declared free and fair. So let INEC now do a research as to why was it possible to conduct an open ballot system, and yet you had a free and fair election. Now, in 1998, I was not aware that Ifre Akpata of INEC conducted a free and fair election in this country. And in 1993, back to 1993, I was not aware that Professor Humphrey Nwosu conducted a free and fair election in this country. Now it has been acknowledged by the recognition of Moshood Abiola as one of the freest and fairest elections in Nigeria. Now, why can't INEC begin to sit down and admit their failure, that they are retrogressing? If in 1989 we had an open ballot system that was free and fair, if in 1993 Professor Nwosu conducted a free and fair election, if in 1998, 1999, Ifre Akpata conducted a free and fair election, of course in 2015, fairly by Professor Jega, what is happening now? So it is not the question of voters being paid or that. There is lack of confidence on the part of the electoral empire. If the voters and the political parties know that INEC could be free and fair in their conduct, then the essence of giving money to the voter will have insignificant influence on the outcome of the election. But we have a system where INEC is compromising and allowing these malpractices to go on, and they are not involving internal mechanisms that will create confidence on the part of the electorate. So when you are going to the polling booth, you know that your vote will be protected, your vote will count, and of course you'll be a respected citizen of this country. So electoral system, whatever you call it, it's an outcome, it's a part of the political system. And the political system is a combination of the citizens and the government. Government serves as the independent variable to drive the voters' education and to determine the efficiency of the electoral system. So if our elections are failing, it means government is failing. And if government is failing, the agencies that's responsible for the conduct of the election is that INEC is failing. I'm happy the director is here. I'm sure he has been in INEC for many years. Go and ask and sit down and do a research that even in an open ballot system, electoral commission in this country conducted a free and fair election. So it is not a question of people buying vote at the polling unit and showing it to agents to get money. It is the fact that INEC is compromising and INEC is becoming increasingly incompetent. And of course, if you trace it to government, because there's a synergy between government and INEC. INEC is simply an agency of government. So we need a political system that will be neutral, that will be efficient, that will be effective. For goodness sake, what is the difficulty in conducting an election? In the market squares and the villages, elections are held in communities, open ballot system, people vote for their choice and go peacefully. But when at Benicio people do not have confidence in the electoral empire, you now see these vices that are not taking and characterizing our electoral system in Nigeria.
Not that people think that they cannot penetrate the electoral umpire. That's why they take their own steps to influence the election. Contrary to what you are saying, that there is no confidence in the electoral system. But people seem to have forgotten about influencing INEC now and create their own way of influencing the elections.
Now, let me tell you, politicians will not make extraordinary obnoxious arrangements if they know that the electoral empire will be free and fair, will be transparent, and will be efficient and effective. Then the voters will not vote for ₦1 million if the system is effective and efficient. Now let's not begin to draw a wrong conclusion from the premises that are so obvious that voters from their homes know that they are going to vote for a particular candidate. But the issue is that when they are living their various communities and homes, the question that is bothering them is that will the system be efficient? Will the system be transparent? Now, if you don't have confidence in the system, then you cannot subordinate to the interests and the obnoxious activities of politicians. But if it's like you're going to the bank, and if you know that your money is going to be safe, you're not going to bother about who is on the counter that is going to receive the money for you. So, because you know whoever you give the money to at the counter is going to keep your money. So if you're a voter, you're going to vote, you're not going to bother about who is going to give you $10,000 or $100,000 if you know that INEC is going to be transparent in the process. Now, how will INEC transparency come? Why is it possible for politicians to know the voting pattern of a particular community or a particular political party a voter has voted for? Because the INEC has not been able to provide the apparatus with all the huge budget to protect the secrecy of the voter. Now, the security agency is seated, they are watching, politicians and their agents are giving instructions to say, cast your vote and come and show it to me. So if you provide an environment where the politicians know that it is not going to be possible for me to know who this person, this woman or woman is going to vote for, they will make such a budget. But the budget is not becoming the order of the day because they know INEC is there to play the game with them. because they know the security agencies are there to play the game with them. Whether you like it or not, you're not going to blame the voters. You're not going to blame the politicians. You are going to blame the umpire, the agencies that are responsible for ANEC. It's like a judicial system. If you know that the judge is corrupt, you can attempt to go to his house or her house to go and bribe him. But if you know that the judge is courageous and is going to be transparent, and you won't begin to make a budget to go and say, let me go behind the door and bribe a judge. So the politicians are making this arrangement because they now know that ANEC do not have the ability. And the question I'm asking is this: why can't ANEC do a research and find out when we had open ballot system? Politicians know who you are going to vote for in an open line under the SDP and SB. Why was election free and fair? Why was election transparent?
Dr. Isaiah Osifo, thank you very much. You've raised a number of provocative questions, and I'm sure Isaiah Osifo is here. He will respond to them. But I want to bring in Samson Itodo to respond to some of the aspects that Dr. Isaiah Osifo has raised. Are we seeing a situation, for instance, we do know that in the mindset of some members of the electorate, there was always the concern that the votes would not count. And that had to do, of course, with the hangover of the manipulation of the electoral process. But here we are, there's been a clear recognition that, fine, the loopholes that were previously exploited by actors in the electoral process, those loopholes have been plugged significantly. And now, do you continue to blame INEC, as Dr. Isaiah Osifo is doing, with regard to some of the slippages that we still find in the electoral process? Or is it now a question of, say, listen, embark on a orientation process for potential voters to say, look, your votes will count, but do not sell your vote, because selling your vote means actually selling your birthright. We never used to see this, I mean, in the course of voting, as Oluwalo Sazeozi said. In the past, they brought rice and sugar and other condiments, you know, well before the election, usually during the campaign. But now, openly sharing money, the see and buy, has become a nuisance in the last couple of years. What's your reaction?
I think it's important that we don't misinform Nigerians. Secondly, I think our role is to inspire confidence in the citizens, recognizing the dominant challenges that we have. I don't agree with the doctor, with due respect. I don't agree with his assertions. And I think that if you've studied elections in this country, you would observe that we've made incremental progress amidst the challenges. And I'll highlight a couple of those progress and developments within our political process, particularly our electoral process. And perhaps to also say that I don't hold briefs for INEC, but as a civil society actor who has observed elections since 2007, who has followed elections, who has also observed elections in different parts of the world, I will tell you that we've made progress, and there is increasing trust and confidence on the part of voters with respect to our elections. First, there are fundamental principles that underpin elections. One is openness, objectivity, professionalism, impartiality. Before 2011, we had a register that we were not proud of. We've got a voter register where we had Michael Jackson, we had Plate of Rice who were on our register. But when Professor Jega came, we conducted a fresh registration. There were multiple registration. There were issues and credibility questions on our voters register. But you could see an institution that was deeply interested in enhancing the quality of our political process. And we conducted the CVR, the voter registration, and that was eliminated. Even though there are still questions on the register that we have today. But to a large extent, we've got a register that is an improvement, or better than what we used to have. The second was the introduction of the card reader and the permanent voter's card. What has cost political parties and politicians nightmare is the card reader and the PVC. And these two innovations were introduced to deepen the integrity of our political process. In this country, we knew that it was right before us. People could vote multiple times on the day of election. You can't do that today. You can't do that today. In this same country, we've seen where people will go to the polling stations, and if the doctor is very studious of our electoral process, we started with snatching of ballot boxes and stuffing of ballot boxes. We moved from stuffing of ballot boxes to result sheets. There was a time, what happened in Rivers? All politicians were looking for was result sheets.
From ECA.
So all they wanted was, we get result sheets, right result, declare, let's end up in court. And so what we were getting were court judgments and decisions. And look at all the court cases that we've had. The reason why we have staggered elections today was because of those court cases. But most of those elections were reversed. We moved from, or we transited from result sheets. Now, because it has become very difficult to compromise the process, you are seeing this evolving trend of vote buy. That does not mean that we don't have challenges with our electoral management. And we've highlighted a couple of them. Today, we've got INEC officials who are under prosecution. We never used to have that. We never used to have that. But the fact that INEC is also purging itself. But our experience has shown that even in the rise of populism across the world, that no institution is perfect and no institution that appears it has all the core foundations and its strength cannot fail. We've seen institutions fail. We talk about the US today and how its institutions are actually crippling. Even though, yes, we're recording improvements, there are challenges. If you look at stakeholder engagement, for instance, look at political parties, and look at how INEC also takes its decisions. The consultative manner decisions are being made never happened before. So there are improvements in our process. If you look at just even the transmission of results, and let me tell the doctor, my organization conducts parallel vote tabulation, and it's a methodology that deploys statistical principles and technology for observing elections. And we have verified, and that's the only methodology that can verify the outcome of elections. If INEC declares a result that does not fall within our margin of error, it means that there are some questions that needs to be raised on the integrity of the elections. But from Ondo to Anambra to Ekiti, our methodology verified all the results. We showed that the results declared by INEC were a reflection of what transpired at the polling unit. So I want to tell the doctor that, yes, there are challenges within our process, but let us also appreciate the fact that we've made progress, because where we were before is not where we are. And I'll also tell him, we've just concluded a study on Ekiti, on the incidence of vote buying and its manifestation. And if he's really interested, I'll share the report with him. So he sees that voters themselves, and that's where political education actually comes in, that voters themselves in Ekiti, we were in Ekiti, and when we went around to interview voters, voters will tell you that they themselves are interested in selling their votes. They are looking for who will buy their vote. Not because they are not confident that their votes count, or will not count, but because of this whole nature of politics and the fact that there are several factors. So I don't think that we should use one factor to generalize and conclude.
Thanks. We'll have a short time now because we have a second topic to also discuss. Oluwole, I mean, you virtually have an advocate in Samson, but there's another aspect I would like us to... I'm actually
an advocate in the credibility of our electoral process. Let's deal with the issues.
No, I understand. I'm just saying that in terms of dealing with the process. I mean, we are all concerned. The media is also part of the process. Yes. But there's an aspect that I would like us to touch on. Now, security deployment in Ekiti was an issue, namely 30,000 police officers, and then plus, a gaggle of other security agencies. And the reason was that to say, okay, because this is a standalone incident, then we are able to deploy this number. But that and then to also frustrate the likely bossing in of thugs and other disruptive elements from surrounding states or elsewhere. But look at what happened in the 4 by-elections in Obudu, in Kogi, that's Lokoja, in Katsina, and in Bauchi. And in 8 of these locations, particularly in 3 of them, there were incidents that were against the provisions of the law, the electoral law, whether in terms of thuggery or in terms of see and buy. How might the security agents, when you're having a general election, be able to deploy sufficiently, proliferate in the entire country when all of these incidents are happening, especially now that, unfortunately, see and buy, it's becoming normative?
Well, it'll be unfair of me, not being a security expert, to speak about approaches and what they intend to do about that. I think they're better positioned to do so. But speaking generally, where there's a concentration of forces for evil, there has to be a concentration of forces for good or forces for order. And if there's a proliferation of this, if there's a dissipation in terms of how widespread these things are, there will also be an equal opportunity to address the thing. There's a concentration of inequity of security forces, but that's because of the kind of things, of information or reports that they had. And even if we cannot send 30,000 to Ekiti on a general election, you cannot amass so many thugs from neighboring areas as well to come and cause disruption in that particular locality. So it's the fact that you have these resources and you cannot use them on a later date, spread them too thinly, doesn't mean you cannot, when you have the opportunity and the chance, do the same thing in particular stand-alone elections. So is the resource available to them they utilize at any given point of time?
All right, thank you very much. I mean, I raised the issue of security and how INEC might respond to it, because if you remember, Rivers was a particularly intractable case, for INEC on account of the violence visited on some of your staff, whether regular or ad hoc. But let's now take the reactions that have come in from our viewers who have sent in their tweets using our Twitter handle at NTA GMS. Sunday Michael Amakoji. Now, despite the presence of security personnel in Kogi, 3 lives were lost, 38 people reportedly wounded, and there was massive vote buying in the open glare of the security agency. There was also harassment and intimidation. Now, if this could happen in just a by-election in 2 local government areas, then we are in for danger and wailing come 2019.
Dele Jack Solomon says, while we congratulate the winners of last Saturday's election, losers should leverage on the court of law to redress if they feel cheated and have evidence of irregularities. But truth be told, the Buhari factor played a dominant role in the emergence of the winners at the polls.
And Victor Hiroshima has this tweet: there were no surprises in the results of the 4 by-elections. The 2 major parties won in their strongholds. The only drawback is the violence in the Kogi by-election. The deaths recorded were unfortunate.
Aminu Uba Al-Hassan says, Nigeria's democracy is growing as a result of free, fair elections. If the votes of electorate will count and election results will be the true reflection of what transpired at the polls, there will be no need for armed security agents and election tribunals. Kudos.
And Mike Ayakwa has this tweet. Now, kudos to INEC again for conducting free and fair elections devoid of rancor. Now, this wants give us hope for 2019 general elections. There's still room for improvement, such as early distribution of election materials to the polling stations and checkmating of vote buying.
And a second tweet from Dele Jack Solomon says, the federal government and INEC should check broad daylight rape of democracy, human rights violation, and neglect of rule of law through wanton destruction of electoral materials, snatching of ballot boxes, physical assault on innocent electorate, as well as destruction of private and public properties.
And Untonga Ikpe tweets, voter apathy recorded in recent by-elections is a product of a feeling of disenchantment with the political system.
Omogbolahan, who calls himself Mr. Nigeria, says Nigeria still has a whole lot to do in the area of vote buying. Albeit vote buying ain't alien. It's been with us for ages. The impossibility of falsification of election results and ballot box snatching brought it out. We must criminalize it. People should not vote with phones again.
And then we have this one coming in from Amagbola still, it says on Saturday's by-election, let's focus more on Kogi, where pockets of violence were reported. The stakeholders need to do more, particularly INEC and the political parties. It's high time Nigeria grew out of politics of do or die, or that of winner take all. Learn to accept defeat.
And from Prisley Osage to the Director, Voter Education, how do I apply for a new PVC? I have sent a tweet and email to INEC, but no response. I need your assistance. Thank you.
All right, Sonny Michael so, like Mr. Itodo said, what is the rationale behind the declaration of Kogi election results when the number of votes cancelled is far more than the difference between the candidates, the two leading candidates in the election?
Abdulaziz Abdurauf thinks that vote buying is not a criminal offense because only adults vote and are voted for, and they are willing to sell their votes without coercion.
Well, an election is not a stock exchange, so it's not you don't go there and go and start exchanging your votes for money. It's an offense. It's there in the statute books, and let all who are engaged in buying and selling of votes or seeing and buying is an offense. That's what we have to deal with. I would like to thank at this stage all our guests who've been with us in this discussion segment. From Benin, Dr. Azayo Sifo, we'd like to thank you. We had very little time to dwell on some of the points that you have raised. But with regard to the question you asking INEC to conduct your research as to why we had free and fair elections, a transparent process during the open ballot system in 1993 and then as well as 1998-99, perhaps then we might begin to also ask, if those who queued up knew that their votes were going to count and the politicians couldn't manipulate it, why are politicians now resorting to see and buy? It is not INEC who is seeing and buying. But that should be a topic for another day. Dr. Azayo Sifo, political scientist, joining us from our Benin Network studios. Thanks a lot for being on our program this morning. We also would like to thank Sam Itodo, who is the Executive Director of YAGA. Sam, thanks a lot for being around.
Always a pleasure.
As well as the Director of Publicity and Voter Education of INEC, Oluwole Osaze-Oze. Thanks a lot for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you.
All right, so that does it for our first topic. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll be dealing with money issues. This time, not see and buy. It is microcredit for traders. It's called trader money or trader money, depending on your accent.
Nigerians. Suicide bombers are not spirits. They are not ghosts. They are human beings like you and me. They live amongst us. They are your neighbors. They are your friends today, but terrorists tomorrow. So you must know your neighbor now. Security begins with you and me. Know your neighbor. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me.
If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Hear the call of change. Stand up, Nigeria. Change is here and it's going to stay. Change begins with you. Oh yeah, make we go. Go to so let the change begin from within. Look at you, oh Gerula. Change begins with you and me. Oh, change begins with me. Oh, change begins with me. Oh, change begins with
Now, to set the stage for the next topic, let's take Timothy Yusuf, who gives us a background on the report which we're going to do, Trader Money Initiative.
New initiative under the Government Enterprise and Empowerment Program GEEP called the Trader Money has been launched by the federal government. It is part of the Buhari administration's genuine efforts to further enlarge its financial inclusion agenda for all Nigerians regardless of social class and economic status. The initiative is to empower 2 million petty traders between now and the end of the year. Launched last week in Lagos, the scheme would grant a minimum of 30,000 loans in each state of the Federation and the Federal Capital Territory. The 2 million mark is expected to be attained on or before the end of this year, with petty traders in Lagos, Kano, and Abia states set to be the first round of beneficiaries to draw the collateral-free loans. In addition to the 30,000 loans per state, states with larger population like Lagos and Kano are expected to get more than 30,000 loans. It is confirmed that in the pilot states, about 500,000 potential beneficiaries have so far been enumerated. As part of efforts to identify the beneficiaries, about 4,000 enumeration agents have been engaged by the Bank of Industry, which is deploying the new scheme. The overall benefit of Trader Money is to help petty traders expand their trade through the provision of collateral-free loans of 10,000 naira. The loans are repayable over a period of 6 months, while the beneficiaries can get access to a higher facility ranging from 15,000 to 50,000 naira when they repay 10,000 naira within the stipulated time period. As the present administration takes financial inclusion down to the grassroots, the fact remains that many of the petty traders don't have what the commercial banks require to grant them loans. This, the administration is keen to ensure that such traders at that level are able to build their businesses and grow. The scheme will soon be taken to other states in the country, with Abia and Kano states next in line.
They call it market money, and the money is readily available for them to access. And I'm telling you, if this government continue, I'm sure not more than 2 million, maybe we are targeting over 10 million.
All right, thank you very much, Timothy Yusuf, for that background report. Just before we went on that short break, I was concerned about, Femi, remember that I was concerned about either the accent or the inflection you needed to have to pronounce it. Now, we understand it's Trader Money. So
to make it as local as possible.
Yes, Trader Money. Yes. Trader Money. That would be. Listen. But we have two guests right here with us in the studios to discuss this. We'd like to welcome the Executive Director of the Bank of Industry, Mrs. Toyin Adeniji, to speak more on this. Mrs. Adeniji, pleasure to have you on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you.
We also have with us Niyi Akin Siju, is an investment expert. You're welcome to the program.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, let's begin with the Executive Director of Bank of Industry. Now, the Bank of Industry is behind the Trader Money program, and if so, what is it all about, and how much is the initial outlay to finance the Trader Money credit scheme?
Okay, so to correct that, Bank of Industry is actually not behind it. Okay. So Trader Money is actually an initiative of this administration, particularly President Buhari. He's very keen to ensure that we bring credit to the grassroots. We had a program that we ran before, also for the government, Market Money, and that was targeting traders that needed about 50,000 naira. So it is an initiative of the government. It is part of the social intervention program. And so Bank of Industry is executing it as an agency. So so I guess that sort of sets the stage for that.
In other words, the funder is the federal government.
Absolutely.
And the implementing agency is the Bank of Industry.
Absolutely.
All right, so tell us some more about the scheme.
So in terms of what it is, the product is a 10,000 naira microcredit loan, which is payable in 3 to 6 months. It is interest-free, it is collateral-free, and it's very easy. The key thing is the ease of access. Hitherto, you can imagine that if you're a petty trader with a tabletop selling tomatoes, selling plantain, you're unlikely to be able to go into a bank and have any attention for several reasons. So what this product does is that it brings that cash or that product to you. So we actually enumerate at the point of trade or at the point of breaking bulk. So we have enumerators. They go around to different markets. They take just very simple information, your name, your telephone number, and they also take a picture of you at your point of trade. And so we use that, and that's what we process for you to get the first loan, which is 10,000 naira. As I said, it's payable over 3 to 6 months. If you finish that repayment, you qualify for a bigger loan, 15,000, and then 20,000.
We are not a structured society, sorry to say, but we all see, particularly trading. People trade anyhow, anywhere. Your enumerators, and how are they going to have the documentation of who got what, where, and how to get that person again to pay back?
So first of all, because of the scale, our initial target is 2 million beneficiaries. So what we have done is we have actually been able to deconstruct microcredit and rebuild what I'd call like a rail, like what I'd call rails. And so it's a technically enabled platform. So all our data is actually, so it's not manually done. So there's an app, they go with their tablet, they take the information, and it's already locked into our own system, a database, or a whitelist, if you can call it that. So we do have all the information which we can mine. We know, who is who. Now, what that also means by going to their point of trade means that to some extent, you know where they are, because we also record their GPS, so we know where they are. Okay. And with marketers and people that trade, they don't migrate. So you're not in Mushi today and in Badagry tomorrow. They tend to stay within the same areas. The good thing also is that this program is also meant to encourage financial inclusion. So before you can get a second loan, you must have a bank account and a BVN. And that actually does ground you, so you become uniquely identified.
Well, just before we bring in Nii, I would like you to clear up one or two things. In terms of eligibility criteria for the microcredit, from what you are describing, is it a requirement that you must be a trader before you have this loan? In other words, you must begin to, have some wares on your tabletop before you access it. That's one. And secondly, what is the means of identification of the individual other than the name and then the telephone number?
Yeah. So first of all, yes, you must be in some sort of should I say commercial or entrepreneurial play. So even if you're not a trader, as in, maybe that's sort of a generalization, you must be serving some value chain, and you must have a need for 10,000 naira to help you expand whatever it is that you're doing. But it's not for, you can't just take the 10,000 naira and go and buy some clothes, or that's not what the intent is. It is to help you grow your business. So even if you're a service provider, you can also access it if you need a 10,000 naira boost to your business.
For our investment expert, how does this work in a society like Nigeria? Is it desirable?
I think I am excited. When I read about it yesterday, I thought perhaps we are getting the approach right. It's not the first time government over the years have tried to touch base with the poor. This principally is a pro-poor program, And of course, we also had this huge headache over the percentage of informality in our economy, over time. I think if my figure is right, our economy is still about close to 70% informal, up to now. So we should make effort, to transit economy into more formality. And I think when I saw this, is for me 2 million people being circled out of the informal sector into the formal sector. It's impressive, because one, it's about building for the future. I'm not bothered about what 10,000 is. But of course, knowing what market is, 10,000 is a huge money for petty traders. It's a huge investment, So when you circle out 2 million people, and let's assume you do that over the next 5 years. That means you are circling out 10 million people from the informal sector into the formal sector. It's going to increase the number of bank accounts. I understand it's either through a bank account or mobile account and all that. That brings formality, you know, to the system, as it were. And of course, it will boost GDP. Our service sector in our GDP had always been perhaps the most buoyant, you know, of our GDP. This will boost GDP. And going forward, it will enhance standard of living. We are all bothered about the poverty ratio and the poverty rates, you know, of the country. This, for me, is also about circling out people from the poverty circle, as it were. So it's a huge one. And I'm also impressed that it's a grounded, formal, processed agency like Bank of Industry that is also handling it.
Well, let's pause here so that you will return to Mrs. Adeniji. I asked earlier about who is eligible for this, and you said, okay, fine, you have to be a trader, you have to be in service. I'm just wondering, would you get people like, you know, the Akara woman, you know, the Moi Moi woman, you know, those Mama Put, you know, and are they also eligible to qualify for this? Because strictly those are not traders, because they both service and some measure of production.
I'm so happy you asked those specific groups. So certainly that is our target market. So I'll give you, for example, and these guys are actually quite organized. In Oyo State, at Ibadan, I was there about 2 weeks ago, speaking to one of the ladies, one of the Olojas, and she actually introduced me to a grouping of their Akara sellers. You know, so they have, like, in all the streets where they cluster, so they do have an association. That is our target market, because they are the ones that need 10,000 naira to buy a bag of beans, to buy some oil, to buy a cooler, and they need it. And this is pretty much the only game they have in terms of access.
But this program is not for the cooperatives now, it's for the individuals.
It's for the individuals, because it is the individuals that get the money. But a lot of times, these informal groupings also have some formality. And so you will find out they all belong to some sort of association, even when they're not full members. So they might not be able to pay the dues, but they are taken care of by that structure around them.
Your rollout is from heavily commercial cities, Lagos, Kano, and Abia. Why those cities? Why not relatively laid-back locations, you know, where 10,000 can almost immediately, you know, provide a pop-up benefit?
Yeah. Well, I think we may have somehow, I don't want to call it a miscommunication. This is a national program. And as I speak, we are at this moment enumerating all across Nigeria. Okay. And so I say at this moment because, for example, bread is a morning product. And so what we do is that in many bakeries, as we speak now, we're at the point of breaking bulk. So we're at the point where the people hawking bread are collecting the bread. So we're taking their details. And we know that they'll come back tomorrow, they'll come back the day after. So it is a national program. By saying Lagos, Kano, Abia, it could be any other 3 states mentioned. And so in the next few weeks, you will hear more about Trader Money all across. We will feature all the states. We will be in every state, in every market, in every local government. So we are spreading this as much as we can.
All right, Nii, is this heartwarming? Because, I mean, the reason I asked that question was, you know, some persons will be concerned. I mean, Lagos and Kano, these are and Abia, fairly saturated. Now that the spread out will be almost uniform and simultaneous, but managing an estimated 2 million persons, what are the potential challenges that we should watch out for? Bearing in mind that some state governments in this country had tried to operate microcredit schemes. They worked for a while and then they collapsed.
I think it's principally about system, and from what the executive director had said, I think there's a strong data infrastructure, and once you have that, it's easier to locate the beneficiaries. I am principally excited too because it talks to the Mama Lakara you know, to the bread vendors and all that. These are very committed people. It's established socially that the petty traders, the very, very low income players are more committed, more trustworthy in terms of collecting money if it's borrowed, collecting credit and paying back than our AMCON debtors. You know? So it's the issue of trust has been settled across jurisdictions. But unfortunately, because of the Nigerian financial infrastructural system, there's no connection between the financial institutions and the very poor. You know? So going forward, I know that the aspirational dimension to hit, that is, if you collect 10,000, you pay back within 6 months, you'll be able to collect 50,000. It's also key, because that would make them look forward, you know, to graduating onto that higher pedestal.
Talking about the payment system, and you testified to it, how trustworthy this collection of people can be. But you see, in their own way of collecting, possibly you are trading with them and a woman or a man comes with a bag and he's collecting 200 naira from the person you are trading with and he goes away. They trust each other. The payment form for this would be a little more formal. You expect them, because they collected it through the banks, you expect them to pay back through the banks?
So what we have also done is we've made it the same way it's easy to cash out. It's also easy to sort of repay the money. We're right now working with all banks. So if you go to any bank, with your telephone number, you can pay back the loan. So it's not, and you know, even in the markets, a lot of markets have banks sort of embedded in between them. So you just have to walk in, you give them your telephone, with your telephone number you can pay back. So that's one of the easy ways. We also have agents that we're working with. We have different, there's also certified or regulated agents by the central bank, and they're also heavily located in marketplaces and in sort of high density clustered areas. So if you go into any of those agents, their systems are connected with our system. So once you give them your telephone number, you can pay back.
From this 10,000 naira, sorry please, from this 10,000 naira, the service charge, who bears the burden?
The service charge is flat. It's 250 naira. So it's for
is it the Bank of Industry, is it government that is paying, or from the
So when you are giving microcredit, once it's free, you are unlikely to get your money back. So for 10,000 naira, you pay back 10,250 naira. And that 250 naira does not cover anything. It's just a token to defray, but it's actually just to get that commitment from the beneficiary.
All right, yeah, I was going to ask this question before you popped it. Again, this is also fairly common among some of the category of potential beneficiaries. First, you will tell us, how, if I'm a petty trader, how do I access the trader money in the first instance? And then, what happens to a trader who is already in Bese? Bese, I mean, for those who do not know, who is already indebted. So the trader money comes, he says, it don't come. So quickly the creditor, grabs it. How do you sort that out so that the money doesn't just go, this was our government money, or let me quickly use it to defray this Bese that has been on my neck?
First of all, the first question in terms of how do you get identified, as I said, there's...
How do you access? How do I present, to whom do I present myself to access the credit?
So you will see that, as I said, we have, as of today, we have more than 4,000 sort of foot soldiers in the market, and that number is increasing. So in a way, it's a push from us. So we're going, they have their tablets, they're going across markets, across clustered areas, across where we have just people that are doing things in clusters. So in the north, in some northern areas, could be people making kuli and have to sell that. So we are going to them, we're pushing it to them. And we're also giving enough awareness at that level, in that terrain, so they know about the product. And in the market, they talk about these things, so they know, they're aware of it, but you have to register with an agent. It is free to register. There are no forms involved. There's no, apart from you just being in a trade, you are likely to come across a trader money register.
Are there ethical merchandise that may be excluded? I mean, if somebody is dealing in, you know, ogogoro, for instance, and then needs trader money.
So it's so we have so we're concentrating on certain value chains. We're looking at food value chains. We're looking at you know, as I said, condiments, bread, added value. But we don't have anything written anywhere. But it's unlikely that our agents will go to someone sort of doing anything illegal or trying to be. You asked the question about how do you ensure that that money is used for the trade that they're using. You know, this group of people, they're in survival mode. And you find out that when you see someone selling oranges in a basket, it's survival mode. They're not going to use, they don't have time for frivolities, right? And so that's why, so we're taking a bet on that. Can we be 100% accurate? Probably not. But I think the 80-20 you know, rule works here. When you're in the marketplace, you are there every day, your neighbors know you, they're all, it's like a community. So that is what we're taking a bet on. Will they use the money for their trade? Hopefully, yes.
All right, Nii, what are last thoughts, very briefly?
Well, my fear really would be what would be the relationship between these beneficiaries and the tax authority, especially at the state level. Because if we start talking about taxing that token, it's formal now, it's in the system. And we don't know what a local government official somewhere will be doing in terms of levies, you know, and of course taxation and all that. I think that should be one area to look into, you know, not to erode the value of the token sum, as it were.
I think that's the point that you just raised now. Sorry, we're pressed for time before we take our tweets. That's a matter that the managers of the SIP, that's the Social Investment Program of the current administration, should take up with the Joint Tax Board. The Joint Tax Board will have to deal with this because, as you very well know, once there is some element of prosperity amongst traders, then the raiders will come from the local governments, you know, tearing receipt, you know, and then all the receipt, 100 naira, 200 naira, before you know it, they are back in Basic. All right, this is from this tweet now on trader money. It's from Mike Ayakwo. Now, the interest-free loans to petty traders, it's a welcome development. It's a driver for economic development. The federal government should ensure that there is equity in the distribution of the loans. It must also be properly monitored to avoid what happened to the then People's Bank.
Similar to what Omogbolahan says, trader money is a good initiative, just that those who dislike this current leadership may want to change the mood to suit their narrative. However, government must ensure equity and fairness in its distribution of these benefits. All right,
this is coming from a Twitter handle, Best Guy, and the essence of what he's asking here has to do with whether the Bank of Industry is still a going concern. I want to know whether this information is true or otherwise. Is the Bank of Industry still a going concern?
That's why I'm here.
All right. Okay. Now, Dele Jack Solomon has the next tweet. The trader money should be a continuous one in markets across the country. Now, why the federal government needs to intensify efforts in creating awareness by stationing agents in social and commercial centers to educate small business owners on how to take advantage of this opportunity.
And Festus Akimboyewa says trader money initiative of the federal government is a good initiative that can help people and help themselves work for their own way out of poverty. It will definitely support small businesses and create jobs and new opportunities. However, government should increase the initial amount to 20,000.
All right, Akeju Olagbaju tweets. Now, it's better to deploy such huge resources to implement welfare scheme to make more impact. Well, of course, Nii has already talked about the inclusiveness of all of this process along with the Bank of Industry. Those are the tweets that we can take at this time. We'd like to thank our two guests for being with us. Nii Akinsuju, always a guest on Good Morning Nigeria, an investment expert. Thanks a lot for being around this morning.
Thanks so much.
We also would like to thank the Executive Director of the Bank of Industry, Mrs. Toyin Adeniji. The Bank of Industry is implementing the Trader Money Initiative. Thanks a lot. I hope I will come knocking at your door. Femi, you and I will go there.
Yeah. Exactly. Thank you very much.
All right, that does it for our two topics on Good Morning Nigeria today. Let's go on to sports.
Yes, Nigeria.